Every time I load up Lightroom, it feels like I've learned something new. Maybe a new way to color grade my photos or a new way to adjust my exposure. But recently, I've learned a new technique which has completely changed how I edit my photos. And today, I'm going to share that technique with you guys. And I'm going to start right now. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Now, this technique works really well when you've got a photo that's got a fairly flat background. You want to add a little bit of contrast to it and really make your subject stand out. And this is a great example. So it's an aerial photo of a boat, but you have got a fairly flat, fairly consistent background there. And we can really add or shape the light within the background and really make our subject stand out. Okay, so what we're gonna do is go out of the edit panel and we're gonna jump over to our masking panel. We're gonna create about 4 masks to create this effect. Okay, so the first mask we're gonna do is gonna go ahead and create a linear gradient. So we're gonna go choose a linear gradient like so, and then go to your top left or right hand side of your image, click and drag and cover around 2/3 of your photo. So we'll go for a gradient like so, but we just want the gradient to affect the background and not the subject. So to do that, we're gonna go ahead and click subtract, and then we're gonna go ahead and select subject. So what it will do is it will create a mask and it will mask out our little boat there, which is really nice. Then with that applied, what we're gonna do is go to our exposure here and we're gonna increase that to around about 1.5 stops. We're really brightening that part of our image. Now to match that, we're gonna go ahead and create basically the identical mask, but the opposite. So we're gonna create a darkened effect. So again, create new mask. We're gonna go down to linear gradient. We've obviously chosen the top left. So now let's go ahead and choose the bottom right. So click, drag, and again, cover around 2/3 of your image. Now again, we don't want it to affect our subject. So subtract, and we're gonna go ahead and select subject. So we've basically cut that out. And again, what we're gonna do is go to our exposure here, and we're gonna drop that down by around about -1.5 stops there. So nice and dark. And already, it's making it look a little bit interesting. We know we haven't just got a flat, consistent background. We've got a little bit of light coming through. So it's brighter and it slowly darkens as the image progresses. But we really want to emphasize this. And the best way to do that is actually using a vignette. But instead of actually using the post-cropping vignette tool inside our effects panel, we can actually use it or create it using a mask. So what we're gonna do, new mask, but this time we're gonna use radial gradient this time. Select the center of our image and basically zoom out, covering just the edges. So we'd go for something like so. So it's just touching the edges of our photo. Now with that, you probably want to increase the feather a little bit. So you want to drop that feather down, probably to around about 50 or so. So we've got an effect similar to this. Then, obviously we want to add a vignette to the outside of our photo. What we're going to do is simply click invert. So it's just affecting the exterior part of our image. Then with our exposure selected, simply drop that down. Now what this will really do is it'll really isolate that boat using exposure and luminosity to really focus in on that boat, darkening the actual background here. Now you don't want to go too far because it kind of looks a little bit peculiar, but around about -1 to 1.5 works really nicely. But we really want to shape that light. And the last one we're going to do is just add a little bit more brightness to the overall left-hand side of our image there. You can see it looks a little bit brighter thanks to that linear gradient we made earlier. But what we can do is really emphasize that. So the last mask we'll do, again, new mask. What we'll do is create a radial gradient, but this time we're going to create an elliptical gradient, something like so. We're going to have a 100% feather, so we're going to go all the way to 100% there. We're going to change it to around about here, but this time we actually want it to affect the boat slightly. So we're not going to subtract the mask this time. So we're going to go for something like so, and then all you'll need to do is go to your exposure here and simply increase that. And look at that. Look how cool that looks. I am really happy with that. Now you can make the mask a little bit longer, so it's a little bit more subtle, and you'll go for something like so. Now, if you're not happy with the background color, for example, you can actually use not just brightness, but you can also use saturation as well. So if you wanted to, and this is completely optional, create a new mask, but this time just select the subject. What we're gonna do is invert it, so we're just selecting the background, and you can actually drop the saturation of that, as well as change the color if you want to. So for example, I might choose hue of 25, and I might reduce the saturation by -30. And that will really help. So we've really made our subject stand out by basically doing two things. Darkening and really shaping the light, so we're using luminosity to really focus in on our subject, as well as we've reduced the saturation of the background. Not by enough, so it looks peculiar or incorrect or fake, for example, just enough to make it look nice and subtle. And this is a technique that I genuinely wish I knew sooner, because look at the difference. Here is the before, and here is the after.